Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Sounds like the microphones are on. Welcome to this first EU press briefing of the second week of COP26 in Glasgow. On the stage today, you have Mr. Andrzej Wieziak, the Minister representing the Presidency of the Council of the European Union, and Mr. Frans Timmermans, the Executive Vice President of the European Commission, who is responsible for the European Green Deal. Mr. Wieziak and Mr. Timmermans will give some short opening remarks, and then we will take your questions. So I give the floor, first of all, to the Minister, please.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me the floor. COP26 represents a decisive step for the future of our planet and the young generations. They are following our everyday step in Glasgow with high expectations, and we are deciding the future of this planet, of our Earth. It is high time we act responsibly and move from good intentions in the past to concrete action to achieve the 1.5 degree Celsius target. We will succeed if we are united and act together, the whole world, all countries and all stakeholders. At the same time, we must make sure that our actions do not jeopardize social cohesion and economic development, and that we help developing countries. The EU member states ministers agree that much higher ambition is needed at the global level, especially from those countries responsible for the most of greenhouse gas emissions to keep the 1.5 degree Celsius targets achievable. Many mitigation and adaptation measures represent higher or lower burden for the countries, but at the same time provide an opportunity for progress for the economy and society at large. However, both measures must be balanced. All parties to the Paris Agreement must strengthen climate resilience and reduce vulnerability to climate change, fulfilling the commitment to developed countries to contribute 100 billion euros annually by 2025 to climate action in developing countries is also vital. So far, only about 80% of this commitment has been fulfilled. Many leaders at the World Leaders Summit at the beginning of this session promised to increase their contributions so that the target of 100 billion US dollars a year is likely to be reached soon. At the Luxembourg Council meeting at 6th of October, we, the ministers, adopted the position that the EU supports, under certain conditions, a common 5-year time frame for updating NDCs, which is an important part of the EU's negotiation mandate at COP26. The common time frame is one of the fundamental pillars of the rule book for the implementation of the Paris Agreement. The EU will do everything in its power to adopt the rule book, which is also one of the main goals of the conference here in Glasgow. Now it is high time to deliver a realistic pathway towards the goal of 1.5 degrees. Slovenia, in the role of EU presidency, is working with our European partners in such direction. However, with only 8% of global emissions, the EU cannot solve the problem alone. Everyone needs to assume their share of responsibility and thus ensure that our joint efforts will be effective. Now is the time to finally make the bold and responsible decisions to act for the sake of this planet and also for young generations. We are all aware of the importance of reaching agreement on the key issues that will form the basis for countries to take swift and effective actions against climate change, thus maintaining the possibility of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrial levels. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Minister. I give the floor now to Executive Vice President Frans Timmermans.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, André, for giving such a complete and precise overview of where we are. And I believe if you look back over the last couple of weeks, starting point for me would be the IPCC report. That was so alarming that I think there's nobody that can still be in denial of the crisis we're already in. And I believe if you listen to the speeches of the leaders last week, this sort of was reflected in how they intervened here. And we are seeing some developments that would have been almost impossible a couple of years ago. I think, if not all, but almost all major economies and major actors have committed to a carbon neutral position by more or less the middle of the century. That would have been unthinkable a couple of years ago. So there are some reasons to be cheerful, to quote Ian Dury, but we have still a tremendous amount of work to do. From an EU perspective, setting a target only has real meaning if you back that up with concrete policies that will get you to that target. So that is why first we set into law in the EU climate neutrality by 2050, a reduction of at least 55% by 2030, and then we put forward a package of measures that would get us there. And I believe this is what I hope I can convince other major emitters to do, is not just to declare a date for carbon neutrality or climate neutrality, but then also come up with the policies that we have to undertake now. And if we don't take these steps now, if we don't make a success of this COP, it's difficult to see how we can reduce with half the emissions in less than 10 years' time. It needs to happen right now. And I think the sense of urgency has increased. I think we still have a lot of things to do in the days to come. Where do I see the need for progress? Obviously on climate finance, but that's moving forward. I also believe we need to give a heightened importance to adaptation. We're almost learning that on a daily basis, that adaptation has become extremely important. As we all know, a couple of years ago, it was almost painful to talk about adaptation because it was sort of admitting defeat in the eye of the climate crisis. But now we fully understand that adaptation and mitigation are two sides of exactly the same coin, and that especially developing countries will need to see the richest countries, the industrialized world, to be serious about adaptation, because those are costs they can't bear themselves. And we need to show the solidarity. We need to do what was promised. And I think we're getting there. We're now part of a movement, a global movement, to make sure that humanity learns to live within planetary boundaries. And it's one of the most daunting challenges humanity's ever faced. That's the bad news. The good news is we can fix this. We can do this. And at the end of the COP, we need to be in a position to say, we're still on track to be well below 2 degrees. We still have a shot at the 1.5 degrees. That, all our efforts this week should be directed at that. Now, we will be working closely with our progressive partners from around the world, as we have done since Paris, as we have done since the creation of the High Ambition Coalition. We need to keep the High Ambition Coalition in a position to push us forward in terms of ambition, and that's why I'm also pleased to confirm that we have just finalized our internal procedures that allow the EU to join the High Ambition Coalition statement for this COP. Going forward, it is clear to me that the developed countries have a particular responsibility, and that is why, as André mentioned, we need to close the gap on climate finance. We've been doing our share as EU, I don't want to bang on about the fact that we've been doing our share, because it sounds a bit complacent. I'm not complacent at all, but I'm just saying to the other developed countries, if we can do our share, I'm sure you can do your share as well. And if everybody does their share, we will certainly be able to come up with the 100 billion, and then we can start an honest and serious discussion about what needs to be done also after 2025. And of course, again, underline what André said, we need to complete the Paris rulebook. It's about time we ended the discussion on the rules of the game. And for that, to work, we need to be sure that we're comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. So we need clarity on transparency, we need clarity on accountability, we need to find a solution on common timeframes, we need to find a solution on loss and damage. And I think this can all be done this week if we all put our minds to it and if we all look forward to finding a compromise. And for us, why is integrity, ambition, transparency, accountability so important? Because we want to let the markets do their share. We want carbon to be priced in a way that can be accounted for on a global scale. We want an emissions trading system to work on a global scale if it pleases, if it comes in the direction of what other nations would like to do. So it's high time we finished the work on all the rules of the game. It's high time we came to conclusions about finances. It's high time we prepared our future. We prepared our future work in such a way that we can conclude this COP at the end of this week by saying, okay, we're still on track, still a lot of work to do. There might be some gaps here and there, but we're still on track to stay well below 2 degrees. We're still on track to have a shot at the 1.5. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Timmermans. We'll now take a few questions. I'll take them in groups of 2. The microphones will come to you if you can stand and use the mic. I will go first to the 2 ladies in the front row. And then we've lots of hands raised. We'll try and get through as many as we can.
Hi, thank you. Amy for CNN. I have 2 questions, if that's okay. Firstly, we understand that paragraph 51 of the Paris Agreement effectively takes out any requirement for reparations and liability. But let's say that wasn't the case. Can you explain why the EU would still be reluctant to pay additional funding for loss and damage? And secondly, are you able to confirm reports that the US and Germany are blocking a deal on electric vehicles? And if so, what are your thoughts on that? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, we'll take here. So.
Thank you. Fiona Harvey from The Guardian. Can the European Union really call itself a leader on climate change when some member states are taking so long to phase out coal? Germany not till the late 2030s and Poland not until almost 2050 itself. So as coal is so important, as the IEA has told us, we can't reach 1.5 or keep within 1.5 rather, unless we phase out coal. Shouldn't the EU be taking more of a leadership on coal?
Thank you. Mr. Timmermans, do you want to answer first? No?
Maybe, yeah. Maybe two thoughts about loss and damage. We recognize that this is extremely important issue with connection with finance to hear those developing countries who have many problems with that. We have also in Europe. Let me just express last year floods in Western Europe and other disasters which happen all over the world. So loss and damage are extremely important part of this negotiation process. It was very clear that we can and we must underline also this extremely important part of negotiation process. And when we are speaking about coal in our member states, and different member states have different current position. Some member states have almost no problems. Some member states have extreme problems with to reduce emissions from, especially in energy sector. So this is the hardest part among member states to find this common basis to reduce all of them greenhouse gas and be net zero emission till 2050. And all member states is now in process. Some adopted, Slovenia, for example, long-term strategy. And it is European Commission launched this Fit for 55 package how to do this ambitious in first 10 years of this long-term process. It is extremely important to go and follow this path to be zero emission till 2050. But as I mentioned, some countries have different position and also different. They are not the same how to reduce this in the same position. For example, some see the nuclear energy as a transition energy to be zero emission country in let me say till 2050. Some see the gas as transition energy till 2050. So we are in very different position, and we are trying to find these solutions for all. And this is not very easy part of work we are doing among all member states in European Union.
So let me just react to some of the questions. I have to say, I don't know about this electric vehicle thing with the US and Germany. It's news to me. I haven't heard about that. So I'll have to come back to you on that, try and find out. On loss and damage, so what do we actually want to achieve on loss and damage? So we're faced increasingly with natural disasters caused by climate change. We want to be able to react as swiftly as possible and get the money where it needs to be as quickly as possible. You know, I was also talking to representatives of small island states this morning, and their grievance is also, it takes such a terrible long time before we actually get some funding. So for that to work in a better way, we need to strengthen the Santiago network, and the European Union is very supportive of strengthening that network. We need also to look at all the different organizations that are involved in addressing the issue of there is going to be a disaster or there has been a disaster, what actually happened. So to put them under a stress test to see, using the Santiago network, how they can better perform. And I think if we work on all these things, it becomes easier for donors to mobilize funds and to direct them more quickly to where the funds will be needed. So I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. The European Union is a strong supporter of creating a better loss and damage system based on the Santiago network. And of course, this will also involve finances. And as I said, we want to be leading in terms of assuring finances for adaptation, including on loss and damage. So that's the answer to your question on loss and damage. Then on coal, look, we still have 30 coal mining regions in Europe today. What we're doing with both Next Generation EU, which is the money to get out of the economic crisis caused by COVID, and the Just Transition Fund and all the other means we have under the Green Deal, we want to help coal mining regions to find a better future for themselves. Now, what we've seen over the years is that the exit out of coal calendar has been sped up quite quickly. It's just a few years ago that in Poland they were talking about coal is forever, for all eternity. Now they've reached an agreement with the trade unions that they would exit out of coal in 2049. I would not be surprised if simply because of economic and other developments that would in some regions be quicker. Incidentally, Polish regions are reaching out to us at the Commission to help them restructure the regions to bring new economic activity and to ensure that there will be employment for people now working in the coal mining industry. You know, I'm from a coal mining region myself, and I know how painful it is if you don't do the right investments to make sure these regions have a strong but different economic future. You know, we're very good at creating economic opportunity in new economic developments, but we're not always very good in creating that opportunity in the places where old industries will be disappearing. This country has experience with that. We've had that in many European countries. So now we have a unique opportunity to invest in the places and the people in the coal mining regions. And that will take some time, but you've seen, you said Germany late 30s, I understand, if I follow the press correctly, that now the coalition is talking about 2030 as exit of coal. So things are speeding up for political reasons, for climate reasons, but also simply because coal doesn't have a future. It just doesn't have a future. And I was in Indonesia recently. I was in India. Even those countries are contemplating a future without coal and developing policies to get them there. And that's really going to make a difference. If we do this on a global scale, I mean, we've just entered into an agreement with South Africa to also help them bring their energy system into a sustainable world. So I understand your question. Coal is still a big challenge, but I think we're making progress, and I'm pretty confident that in Europe we can show through a just transition process that you can not just close coal mines, but you can also bring new opportunities to coal mining regions.
Okay, thank you very much. For the next two questions, I'll go to this gentleman in the front row, and then I will go in a straight line back to the fourth row.
Mr. Timmermans, it's good to see you again. I had an opportunity to ask you a question in Madrid, and it's similar. This is an issue that you have spent a lot of time studying over the last 2 years, and that's the issue of biomass as it's used in the European Union. It makes up 60% of renewable energy in the European Union. My question is, where are you on biomass as a replacement for coal? Is this climate friendly? Are the emissions better in burning all this wood than it is than burning coal? You're actually not required to count the emissions at the smokestack in places that are burning wood instead of coal. This is a major issue, and I know you've heard from people on both sides of this issue. You're being pulled at it, and I applaud how deeply you've dug into this. But a lot of people are wondering, where is Frans Timmermans on biomass? And is this an industry that is going to be allowed to grow as it affects forests around the world? Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll take a second question together. Yeah, the gentleman in the fourth row of the same line.
Hello, Felix von Geyer, neworator.com. Lovely to see you actually again. Now, I'm just thinking, reasons to be cheerful, part 26 perhaps. And so I'm just thinking that we seem to probably be more caught on technical issues, but there are still some little political issues, including the idea of voluntary pledges on, say, adaptation, or should we have a levy in the same way as you have on 6.2? I'd like any comments on that. But as Amy and Fiona are asking about electric vehicles and coal, could you maybe elaborate more on the hydrogen vision that you have in the EU?
Okay. Who would like to go first?
Maybe just about hydrogen. I think that this is very important part of research and development initiatives in the European Union and all over the world. I think that this is somehow chemical storage of energy. And I hope that in a few years this technology will be competitive and available for economy sector and for energy sector. I believe that this is a huge opportunity to be zero net emission planet in the future. So to straighten financing this kind of research and development initiatives is very appropriate, and I hope that the results will come very soon.
On biomass, well, you see, first of all, to be perfectly blunt with you, biomass will have to be part of our energy mix if we want to move to remove our dependency on fossil fuels. Secondly, it depends on the quality of your biomass. We have to be very clear in defining what is acceptable biomass and what is not. And I think that's where the crux of the matter is. Some people would say you could never find a definition good enough, combined with a policy efficient enough to police that. We don't believe that. We believe there is a way of defining exactly which biomass can be used in your energy mix, and also to make sure you do not allow for whole forests to be cut down and then cut into small pieces and then end up in a furnace somewhere, which is sadly still happening today. So we have a lot of work to do here, but I think there is a way of defining which biomass is acceptable in your energy mix. We're simply not able to do this without biomass. I have to be honest to you about that. But if you are precise in defining which biomass is acceptable, for instance, in maintenance of forests, you can collect dead wood, you can collect those elements of the forest that no longer are alive, have fallen down, etc. That constitutes quite serious amounts of biomass. Also in debris, in wood that's no longer used in construction and elsewhere, that could also be part of biomass. So as long as your definition is sustainable, then I think we can work with biomass. But I do admit that it's quite complicated to get this right, to get this precise, but we're working on that.
Sorry.
Of course it's creating an issue, because it's much easier to simply say no biomass. That's much easier, but that's simply not possible in terms of the energy mix we will be needing in the future. And I want to be straightforward and honest about that, and then try and make sure that we use the biomass that is not at odds with our environmental and climate objectives. That's what I'm trying to do. On the climate finance, I think we need some serious, clear commitments on climate finance. We need, first of all, to reach as soon as possible the $100 billion that was promised, and then we need to start an earnest discussion about what we're going to do after 2025, because the needs for adaptation finance will only increase. And the sooner we come to terms with that reality, the better it is, and we can then find solutions to make that happen. And I think we need to go beyond voluntary pledges. I think it needs to be part of a system. And I also believe, we need to find creative ways of financing this. I also believe, more fundamentally, we will have to look at our institutions, the international financial institutions, which were built for the world of 1945 and should now be made fit for purpose in this world, where we are faced with a climate crisis that does not allow for us to take a lot of time to react to it. Hydrogen, very quickly on that. Hydrogen is, without any doubt, part of the solution of our energy needs in the future. It is an excellent energy carrier for difficult to abate sectors, such as steel, where you need high calories that cannot be reached just with electricity. By the way, the first samples of green steel made with hydrogen are already there from Sweden, and I think the steel industry will start moving quickly in that direction. I think that's a very exciting prospect. Hydrogen can also be used to store energy. If you get a lot of wind energy or solar energy, you need to store it because for other times, or it is also, you can transport it over longer distances without it losing its energy worth. So I strongly believe in that. It will be part of the mobility of the future, whether it's in the form of hydrogen or ammonia. I think our shipping industry will quickly move in that direction. In airline industry, we will be seeing developments in the same vein, and also in road transport, we will see fuel cells fueled with hydrogen play an increasing role. So hydrogen is, as I said several times, hydrogen rocks. It rocks because it does provide some of the solutions we need in the energy mix of the future, so that we can reform our economy, learn to live within planetary boundaries without making huge concessions to the levels of comfort we're used to, or to the levels of development we want developing nations to attain. Thank you.
The Minister wanted to add something, and then I'm getting signs that we'll have to stop.
A few words about biomass. Different countries in the European Union have different circumstances. For example, Slovenia is covered with forests. We have about 60% of our whole territory is covered with forests. So we put this biomass as important solution in our long-term strategy. So it is very hard to speak about some initiative, but some countries count on biomass a lot, and we do.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you, Executive Vice President. We will have to stop there. I'm getting signs from the room manager, but we will be back for a couple more briefings during the week, so you will have another opportunity to ask questions to the EU. Thanks. Thanks for your
Thank you very much.
Thank you.